Eric San Diego Digital.
Ohayou gozaimasu, konnichiwa, konbanwa, for whenever you're listening to the Joshi Pod, your podcast about the world of Japanese women's wrestling, Joshi Wrestling. I'm your host, Eric Howard, coming to you from beautiful San Diego, California. And guys, I hope you had a wonderful holiday season, Happy New Year, all that kind of good stuff. I hope you're all healthy. I hope you're all well. I hope you've all been able to avoid that crazy virus out there. And I thank you guys for downloading and listening to this episode of the Joshi Pod. And again, guys, I should know better, but when I get the Joshi news team together, JD, K, JPQ, that we're going to go long. We're going to talk much longer than I thought we were going to talk. And I'm going to end up turning one long episode into two separate episodes. So, again, this episode was intended to be the opening for our year-end review, but in fact, it has become its own episode, and it's concerning the invaders that came into Stardom recently, and I get to share my opinion, and the guys get to share theirs as well, and we talk about Yoshiko and Nanae showing up in the Stardom ring, and I wanted to chat about this more than just on Twitter, because Twitter, it's very difficult to get the points across or even have a decent conversation about it. I mean, obviously we all know that about Twitter. But again, this episode is the chat about Yoshiko and Nanae showing up in Stardom. We're going to have a separate show with our year-end review, and again, Kay from the Big Egg Joshi podcast and the Red Leaf Retrocast, which he does with JD, and JPQ from Retirement, and who's a new father, which is super awesome. And so enjoy this episode, or send me the hate tweets if you disagree with me about my opinions on this. And we'll talk to you guys again real soon. And also, please download and listen to that year-end review. It's a lot of fun. And I want to thank Grizzly FOG for the music. He will be the beat master, or whatever you want to call it. I'm so white, I can't think of the proper term. But he's providing the songs, the beats for our new episodes of the Joshi Pod. So Grizzly FOG, former guest, friend of the show, you'll hear his music all throughout the podcast, and I will put links to where you can get your copies as well. He's also got some songs on iTunes, Bandcamp. So check his music out. He loves Joshi Wrestling. He's got an album called the Joshi Tape, and it's got some really good songs, and that's what I'm pulling from for the Joshi Pod episodes. So give it a listen. Support Grizzly FOG, and guys, we'll talk to you again real soon. Arigatou gozaimasu.
If I'm gonna do this, I'll need my news team at my side. News team, assemble! News team, assemble!
Hey guys, back here at the Joshi Pod, and as you've heard, we've assembled the Joshi, what do we call ourselves? The Joshi News Team? Yeah, the Joshi News Team. We've assembled once again. I'd like to welcome to the show JD from the Red Leaf Retrocast, Kay from the Big Egg Joshi podcast, and JPQ from... Where are you from, JPQ now?
Retirement.
But
Yeah,
we're all award-winning podcast hosts now.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Wow.
maybe someday.
Maybe someday you'll be as exclusive as us.
Yeah, acclaimed awards.
JPQ over here is winning awards, not even podcasting.
I had a strong 6 months. Thank you very much.
So I interview Mio Shirai. I interview...
Tsukasa Fujimoto.
Pick a name. Pick any name you want to, and I can't win a gosh darn award?
That is correct, sir.
It does seem a
That
little
is very
criminal,
much correct.
You know, I mean, the prep work between NPA and Joshi Pod are vastly different. One is just painstakingly detail-oriented, research-driven, looking to get contacts on the phone. And then there's the Joshi Pod, right? And then there's just, you reaching out to wrestlers and just having interviews. No big deal.
It's not like I flew to Japan to interview Bull Nakano or anything.
No, it's nothing. That's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
You pay for your prestige. We actually have to work for it.
That's a way to look
It's
at
the
it.
organic growth of
This
the
is some
independent.
kind of-
Inorganic growth.
Some kind of bull.
Yes.
I'm going to give myself the Joshi Pod Podcast of the Year of the award to the Joshi Pod.
Congratulations.
Hey, you know what? If you get Aji Kong interviewed, you might get an award because she might intimidate them to get you an award.
Well, I mean, we interviewed Miyako Matsumoto. She can just set you on fire or something for on my behalf.
To be
I
fair,
will
she might set herself on fire too.
I'll just challenge her to a badminton contest and pretty much win that automatically.
So, guys, as you can hear, we have the boys back together for our year in review. Part of the new Joshi Pod, the Joshi Pod 1.5. It's not good enough to be called 2.0. The Joshi Pod 1.5 is we have a new intro song. It's Konami's World by Grizzly FOG. It's on the Joshi tape. Grizzly, a friend of the show, a previous guest on the show. So we're doing a little something different with the intro music. And welcome to the intro music world, Grizzly. You guys know Grizzly.
Mm-hmm.
We have heard of him.
Yeah, so I hope you heard of him on the Joshi Pod.
I said I may have heard of him somewhere.
Nah, he's a good guy, talented guy. And I thank him for allowing me to use that song for the opening of the podcast moving forward. All right, guys. Year in review, 2020. Pretty normal year, right?
Yeah, nothing bad happened at all.
Yes.
Good
No,
wrestling.
nothing whatsoever.
Not like what was the story of the year that Mina
Pick
broke her
one.
nose?
Pick a story. Any story.
Mina broke her nose. That's the story of the year, right?
Well, I heard. I don't know if you've heard the rumblings, Eric, but Bushiroad's going to sell Stardom. Tokyo Joshi Pro is going under because all their talent won't sign. Ice Ribbon's bankrupt, getting bought out by All Japan and Suwama. The list goes on. Just terrible rumblings that are totally all true.
I've heard that the powerhouse that is Diana is coming to rise. They're just making moves, making money moves.
Dude, man. Better than Stardom live streaming on this YouTube thing. I have never heard of this.
Neither have I. It's a very weird platform.
Who's ever heard of that? So guys,
yeah,
obviously
normal year.
the Joshi story of the year, we're not going to go deep into that, but it was Hana Kimura's passing. I don't think there's anything close to that as far as the Joshi story of the year. We won't go deep into that. But one of the latest stories that kind of in a different way impacted Joshi wrestling just happened recently when Yoshiko and Nanae stepped into a Stardom ring again for the first time in, 6 years or so?
Something like that. About 5 or 6 years since the incident.
Nanaism has returned.
Do you guys have thoughts? I have thoughts. Do you guys have thoughts on what good or bad as far as having them back in the promotion?
I think I made the prediction that I saw this coming a mile away. I think once Yoshiko, at the time, I think her and Mayu were both champions, and she had called her out in like a magazine interview or something. And I was like, oh, that's not just happening randomly. There's like a plan here for that. Like they're going to wrestle each other, and I thought it was going to be for the title, either belt, red belt, seedling belt, and I wasn't shocked. Rossi and I have long since still gotten along, so that's not a shocker either. It also seems like Mayu and Yoshiko get along, and you see some other roster members from that time frame that have at least in passing referenced them, at least on Twitter. Mayu has, I think Momo has, Hazuki definitely did. So it's like there's a different sort of mentality, I guess, over there than there is here, where a lot of people seem to think it's like the worst thing ever on the planet. And Yoshiko seems to be widely forgiven by the entire scene, including the fan base. I mean, when Emi Sakura puts her and Mei Saruga together, Emi Sakura protects her students, so if she thought she was dangerous, she wouldn't put them together. And I think that's, in of itself, is much of more of a Yoshiko's not dangerous, guys. Stop thinking she's dangerous than anything. I'm not surprised by it. Surprised it didn't happen sooner, actually. But I think with the Bushiroad stuff, I think maybe they wanted to hold off and instead of doing it like at year end or something, do it at the big Budokan show.
And either of the guys have opinions on it?
I mean, at the end of the day, I can have, residual feelings about it. But if the people involved that it actually affected, other than just some fan over in the United States, if they're okay with it, then why can't I?
JPQ?
I wonder if they're going to reference it. That's the biggest thing for me. So I guess the answer is it's a wait and see for me. Because if it becomes the angle, right, Big Bad Yoshiko coming back, and they're going to play off that incident, then I got a problem with it, right? But if it's just they're back, and when you bring them back together because that's Seedling's, that's Seedling's founder and they're number one right now, minus Arisa Nakajima, obviously. But Yoshiko's having a great year, so you bring her back, you bring Nene in, they intimidate the roster. You're feeling the vibes of 5-6 years ago, but they're not coming out and making that the story. And if they don't make it the story, then it's going to be a palatable exchange, and I think Seedling needs it, right? I think that the pandemic hurt more than a lot of people, discuss. I don't think that anybody's in dire straits or anything, but I do feel as if, Assemble and some of these crossovers and interpromotional work that these Joshi companies are doing are all in a way of trying to maximize as many dates as possible for as many wrestlers as possible to keep as many promotions as possible afloat. And I think this is just one more crossover that we're seeing. And again, it's a history that we've seen with Stardom over the course of the year. It's one consistent that we've seen from Stardom over the course of the year is whether it's Marvelous or, working with Takumi and bringing in May from Marvelous and now working with Seedling. And there's one in the middle that I'm just blanking on off the top of my head.
Yuzupon being brought back.
Thank you. Yuzupon bringing back. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Kevin.
And Unamonase.
And Unamonase coming in. And so it's like I think that they're reaching out and helping this scene. And if you're going to help Seedling, how else do you do it? Who else do you bring in? Do you bring in Arisa? Do you burn that right off the bat? Maybe you should have, second guessing, things like that. But for me, it's like it was right there. Okay, as long as it doesn't become the angle, I think I'll be okay with it in the long run. But I understand why people can be a little suspect. All right, although you shouldn't take it out on Yoshiko, obviously.
No. So here's where my perspective comes from. I've been an entry-level employee. I've been a supervisor, a manager, and now I'm at the director level of a fairly decent, profitable company. Not Apple or Coca-Cola, anything like that, but I'm at the director level of a company. And part of my job as a director is to balance the best interests of the company and the best interest of the employee. And you have to do both. People think that, companies only 100% about worried about the company. It's not true. It's at least in the company I'm working for now, in my perspective. It's not true. You have to look out for the best interest of employees as well. You cannot bring back somebody who assaulted somebody in the workplace back into a company. No company that I've ever worked for, no company my friends have ever worked for would bring anybody back who assaulted somebody else in the workplace. And I've heard people challenge me online. Well, I was like, it's wrestling, it's different. Well, because wrestling is inherently dangerous to begin with, they probably should be more stringent as far as assaults like this, because doing a normal move, quote unquote normal move, is dangerous enough. And with the bad intention and the purposeful intention to injure somebody, that's almost a bigger sin in that environment than a warehouse environment or something like that. And two, where they say that, if the wrestlers are okay with it, then we should be okay with it. I disagree with that completely. You never ask a rank and file employee their opinion on if you should bring somebody back or, something like that. That's not in their pay grade. They are not to have the thumbs up or thumbs down. You don't put an employee in that position. You as a leader, Rossi, whoever else is running the company, they make that decision to not put their employees in a bad situation. And bringing back somebody who's assaulted somebody before is putting them in a bad position. Do I think Yoshiko is going to hit somebody or beat up somebody again? No, I absolutely don't. But if one person is uncomfortable right now in that locker room because she's back, then the leadership of Stardom has failed. And if you expect every employee to come up and speak out and say, no, don't bring them here, don't bring them here, don't bring them here, they're not gonna. I've known through my experiences that employees don't always speak their mind, and sometimes they tell you what you want to hear as their leader, as their if because they, especially in a subjective company or is business like wrestling, that they know that if my boss says, hey, we have this idea we're going to do, what do you think? You're not going to cross your boss and say, that's a terrible idea. I don't feel comfortable with it. Most people won't. You'll have your outliers that will, but most people won't. So my issue is definitely not with Yoshiko. My issue is definitely not with Nanae. They're people coming in getting a job. My problem is with Stardom's leadership, either not standing up for what the wrestling is a business. People want to they want to have it both ways, where it's a business sometimes and it's this sometimes, it's that. It's a business. To run a smart business, you don't bring people like that back into your business after what happened. Live rounds get fired in wrestling sometimes and people get hit and, noses get broken, things like that. That's not what happened in this situation. This was a purposeful situation where somebody went out there to purposely injure somebody else, and they succeeded in basically ended their career. I don't care if it's Yoshiko. I don't care if Mayu shoots on somebody and beats up somebody. Mayu's got to go and never come back. There are certain things you do in the workplace that you can't come back from. You can't come back from workplace violence. You can't even come back from threatening somebody. Those are instant terminating, situations where, you can't come back from violence in the workplace. And Yoshiko did that. Yoshiko brutally, not even, it's not even a small thing, brutally. I don't care who the victim is. She brutally assaulted somebody purposely in a business where you trust your body with somebody else. So my issue definitely is with Stardom, and Stardom, I think, this is a cash grab. Yoshiko's in there grabbing people's throats already. Yoshiko's, being a bully already. And what she did when she was there last time in the company was a bully and took it out on somebody. So Stardom saying, if they haven't said this, but if they do say this, we asked the roster if it's okay. That's BS. That's chicken bleep leadership. That's not leadership. Leadership is balancing what's best for your company, what's best for your employee. Yoshiko can work at other companies. She shouldn't be blackballed from the business, but she can't come back from assaulting somebody at work. JPQ, if you did that at your work, you'd never be brought back. JD, same thing. Me, same thing.
I have worked for companies that have done such things. So
I
speak from plenty of experience in various industries that I'm in, where people are constantly brought back for one horrible thing after another. So maybe I'm kind of numb to that situation and kind of accept that business will be business over what employees think. And I get what you're saying, where there's a cultural mindset, whether it's leans towards the negative. So this is where I'm coming from. I do speak of changing culture all the time. And there has been a significant change in culture in the, just keeping on topic, for the Joshi wrestling world. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't too long ago where stiffing each other. I mean, you watch Yoshiko Tamura, you watch any of those early 2000s to 2010s matches, they look like they're killing each other. The same worked with
look like.
Yeah, well,
some of those cases, yeah, it was not very much a look like. It was very much it was happening. I think like you said, changing cultures, right? So the scene is definitely different. We're different. We're a long since away from the Kana and Nanai shooting on each other in the ring, sort of deals where that was sort of the
What I
norm.
was going for.
Yeah, that's the norm in the scene, right? I mean, I guess I cut you off. Let you finish your point then.
No, my point is that you just can't. I mean, go work someplace else. I don't want her not to wrestle. I'm a fan of hers. I'm a fan of Yoshiko's. I got a picture hugging her. I hope she has success in wrestling, but I think it sends a terrible message to people at Stardom. I think it sends a terrible message to people at Bushi Road that you're telling me that this is an acceptable practice, that you're willing to let somebody who commits workplace violence back into your culture again. And
Well,
I think that's wrong.
I don't disagree with this mindset. My answer to that would be then the business or company that you're working for has made their decision. Whether you agree with it or not, it is up to now the employee to step up or get out and work for someone else if you truly have an issue with that.
See, but
now,
that's poor leadership to put a rank and file employee in that position.
I don't disagree with that.
I don't think that anybody on this this recording thinks that Rossi in his tenure has been a good leader.
No. There's many bridges that man has burned.
Question mark about that man. Yeah,
but
I mean, many bridges he has burned.
But is he? I mean, we don't even know who's actually running Stardom. I mean, he's booking it, but who's actually the main person behind it? You belong to a corporation. There's somebody above you.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's very much the case with Stardom right now. I think you 100%. See it with a lot of who's being pushed in front and how they're pushed in front, and sort of some of the like changing the logo and some of the other things that have happened are very corporate moves that have been made. That said, Rossi is no saint. He's burned a lot of bridges. Go ask Aja Kong how that worked. Go ask Ozaki. Go ask several people. You go ask Tsukasa. Go ask a ton of people. He's burned a lot of bridges. So the man himself is no saint. But I don't think he doesn't care about his roster. I think that was the big thing, the big eye-opening thing that came out of, for me, with the Hana stuff was how much he seemed to actually have cared. That's why when that whole thing went down, I don't put that at his feet. I put that at Bushiroad's feet. Because Bushiroad's handling of that was shit, not his. He seemed to be caught in the middle, from what I could piece together.
I agree. I would take a step further. So I like your stance here, Eric. I think that it's different than a lot of people. I think people look at it from the wrestler side of it. You're kind of looking at it from the responsibility of the promotion, right? And you're holding them to a high standard. So God bless you. I would tell you that it's the fight game, right? And so before it's like, well, I don't want to accept that as being the answer. Well, that's okay. But I think that Bushi Road specifically, because again, you're right in the sense that Rossi pulls a lot of strings, but real being real here, he sold the company last year. Right now, what's the details? Is there a moving out point? Is there a transition? How does this all work? Is he still booked? So like, there's details to it which nobody ever does. Nobody ever gets that story, right? Yeah. And certainly we can't because we're over here. But so there's a lot of unknown. So all of what I'm about to say is speculation, obviously. But
easy, Bruce.
No. But it stands to reason. It stands to reason that a marketing company like Bushi Road that is involved in the fight game, right? And kickboxing and New Japan Pro Wrestling, which has a very sports driven feel to it, that bringing in somebody with heat, in a sense, right, is to your point, Eric, is a cash grab, right? Mm-hmm. And in a year that is caused some desperation with regards to the bottom line, in Q4 to get a little bit of buzz going into Q1, you put together for a 10th anniversary show coming up the next year and or Budokan, Yoshiko back in Stardom, that's going to raise some eyebrows potentially, right? Now, I don't know how this story plays out in Japan, right? And because Stardom is very, in my opinion, they're very domestically driven, right? With a lot of the criticisms that we hear from Westerners about the product, And it is a product to us, right? Like people hate when people say wrestling is a product. No. Stardom is certainly a product to Westerners right now, right? It's not as accessible. It's not. There's a lot of things that people say which are true about them, but my point is that you get into the nuts and bolts, and this mimics to me as somebody that watches UFC, the reason that we got Khabib McGregor, right? So I'm going to take not the vicious of the vicious, but I'm going to take the most realist example that I can with regards to the shoot on Act by Yoshiko, and that is a group of Conor McGregor's friends showing up at a press conference and causing havoc and throwing stuff into buses and injuring fighters and changing cards and assaulting people, right? And then what happened? That turned into like the third best pay-per-view ever done by the UFC, because that is the fight game, right? There's examples of that in boxing. There's examples of that in Bellator, right? And the goofy stuff that they do over there to sell tickets and to sell main events. This is very much bringing Yoshiko back into Stardom at the end of the year, because I said it to both Kay and JD after Osaka and the card came out for year end. I said, man, it's kind of a downer year for the year end, isn't it? You know, like Stardom, yeah, it's a huge show, Osaka, and yeah, they put on some nice stuff this year, but man, year end has always been kind of special. And this year it feels a little downer. And so what do they do at the end of it? They bring Yoshiko back. What? Nene too. Don't forget, Nene, you know, she's got a history as well within Stardom, and you bring those two back, you create a little bit of buzz going into Q1. You're saying that's unacceptable for Stardom to
showing up in Ice Ribbon too.
That's right.
Yes,
she's everywhere, man. She has been for a while.
She's double dipping here.
Yeah, for sure.
I think she could only get away with such a thing, but I think the Ice Ribbon stuff's long term.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays,
right?
Nowadays
sure.
She does.
But my point is, so to bring it full circle, you know, you say, Eric, that that's unacceptable from a leadership side from Stardom. I say maybe, right? But you got to see who you're dealing with, and who you're dealing with right now is Bushiroad, and Bushiroad works in the fight game, right? They don't work in the, conventional way of management of talent, right? And you could say that that's not right, and I can say that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, and so we can meet eye to eye there. It's just one of those things where I think that that's really more of what's happening, in my opinion, which allows them some flexibility. Is it right or isn't it? I guess that's a personal choice, right? And if you see that as being poor leadership, hey man, I'm all for that argument as well.
Yeah, I have a opinion on that as well. When you say it's the fight game, I disagree. I really disagree. It's not the fight game. This is, people want to have it both ways, where sometimes they call it the fight game, or it's a sport, and then sometimes they want to call it performance and this and that. It's got to be one or the other.
I don't disagree, but what I'm saying is that Bushiroad, they only know how to do the fight game.
Well, they do card games and stuff like that as well, and they wouldn't. Sure. I don't think they would find, a kid punching another kid playing a card game acceptable.
No, but
I don't know. They might throw that in a commercial.
They could find some type of cheating instance and bring that guy back and create some opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, there's different ways to go about it. And they may let's be honest. They may look at it and say, they may not care the way that the fans care, right? Because it's not the same ownership group, right? Like, so if Rossi brought back her from 5-6 years ago, well, then okay, then the argument stands. But Rossi doesn't own it anymore. He's a puppet, right? They make the decision. They say, you're bringing Yoshiko back, and he has to sit there and tap his little hat and say, shit, okay. You know what I mean? Maybe. I don't know.
Well, how do we know it wasn't his idea and he proposed it the first place?
He totally could have done that, 100%.
That's probably likely.
His ass could be in the fire, and he said, you know what, we could do this. You know what I mean? Like, 100% could go that direction. Like, so I'm just saying, we don't know, so there's 100 different pathways.
He's the promoter. He knows the history. Mm-hmm. That's where I lean to, just on the rumblings train.
I would too. I'm just presenting.
I'll say one thing on my own side. So Bushiroad is a marketing company. They're not just into the fight game, like you mentioned, the card game. I played that card game for many years, by the way. And they've done quite their own shady tactics with how they've gotten that card game and how they've marketed that card game. The card game, they put so many mechanics, it got really bad. Oh, fuck it. Just reboot the entire card game and sell you more cards at a premium. They did do that.
Dream too.
I do no such thing, but I was going to bring that up. Bang Dream is also a thing that's also a ripoff of a more popular thing called Love Live that
Yeah, I
they
bet you
ripped.
played that
and
too, Kay. You play it all.
I
know.
did. But at the end of the day, I think this was definitely a Rossi thing because Rossi's a promoter. Bushiroad's not the promoter. Rossi is. Rossi knows the history of the company. As for the unsafe work and all the sort of workplace leadership thing, I don't know how that would have ever been expected from Stardom. How we've seen them handle things, even in recent times, I don't know why you would have a standard for them in that regard. I was very much appalled when they did the Natsuko hanging people with the chain on the first show after after the whole Hana stuff. You know that
Ugh,
was
sure.
that was pretty tasteless. Very very tasteless. The fans were not happy, but they continued to push on. And at this point, just everyone just ignores Oedo Tai because they suck so bad. But it's this company. This company has never
Let me
been
interrupt
one.
you there for a second. How bad and terrible does booking a faction and being in that faction have to be, where you do a tasteless act like that, and it gets to the point where people just go, "Ugh, no more."
Yeah, they're not even angry anymore. They just don't care.
Oh my God.
That's apathy. That means you're not over anymore. You don't got go away heat. You're just they don't want you there.
All right.
But I'll say this company has never been one to have high standing morals. They sell photo books, for Christ's sake. Photo books with teenagers in them.
Yep.
Now, I can't say a whole lot. I did buy the last year's one, but I buy it for Momo and they get more of an increase in their percentages. I don't flip through the book. It sits in storage. It doesn't get touched. I do it to fund the wrestlers, at least at the time when they were still a small DIY promotion. This going on forward, I've pretty much said I'm going to just buy merch of Momo and only Momo, no Quinn's Quest and the other bull crap.
I expect you to buy those sexy Dragon Gate photo books next, Kay.
How'd you know?
Shirtless BB Hulk is coming. I know it.
I don't think I'm ready for shirtless BB Hulk.
No one's ready for shirtless BB Hulk. Let's face
But
it.
but I'll say this company has not been one to have good morals, and so to expect them to have them now, I think is. I don't want to say silly because it's not silly to expect them to have
foolhardy.
morals, but you shouldn't have expected them to have them to begin with. I sure haven't, and there's a reason why they're not my favorite promotion anymore. Right? I watch them, but I only watch them tentatively. I watch them because two of my favorite wrestlers are there. I don't watch them because I'm so invested in the product anymore. I kind of keep it at a bit of an arm's length to an extent because it's just not my favorite promotion, and I don't enjoy some of it anymore. Mainly because of some of the stuff that's happened, but also because I don't enjoy who they put in front and why they put the people in front that they have. But as a whole, you shouldn't have expected them to have high morals. I sure haven't, and I'm not, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they do reference it. They haven't. They've referenced that you left Stardom. They haven't referenced why.
Correct.
But if they did, I wouldn't even be stunned. I wouldn't even be shocked.
But I think that people like me or other people that are in the wrestling peripheral media, whatever we want to call ourselves, holding them to a higher standard, I think is a good thing. And expecting better is a good thing. And I'm not afraid to go, fight that fight. And if it costs me never interviewing a Stardom person, maybe that's okay with me, because they are the leaders. They are the standard, right, for Joshi wrestling right now. And I would expect better from them, or I hope better from them, because it's better for the industry. I think it's better for the wrestlers. It's better for everybody, and the better for the fans when you do the right thing. And you guys hate when I compare them to WWE, but the WWE is the standard as well. And you hope that they are at a higher standard. They're not. So they're definitely not at a higher standard, but you really hope that the people that can actually afford to work at a higher standard, they don't have the excuse of money or this or that they act at a higher standard. I think eventually WWE will, once the old man passes away. I think things are going to change somewhat, and it's going to be a little higher road for them.
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Yeah.
I think it'll improve some. I absolutely think it'll improve some. But I just want better from the company that's leading the way for the future of Joshi wrestling. And I don't think that this decision they made is the best interest for Stardom or the best interest for Joshi Wrestling.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment.
I mean, it's fair. Like it's. I don't think it's bad to expect the high standard or to try to hold them to the standards, but when they don't meet the standards, it shouldn't be a shocker.
I'm not shocked. I'm just disappointed.
I can't even be disappointed anymore with some of the decisions. It's just something that I've learned to accept as a promotion. Again, that's why they're not my favorite promotion anymore.
Yeah, but
they've dropped down that list quite hard for me.
I thought Yoshiko was a line they would never cross, and they've crossed.
Oh, I knew they were going to cross. The minute she did that interview calling out Mayu, I was like, "That's something."
At that point, yeah. But I mean, but 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I always thought, that's the line that Stardom won't cross. I mean, as much as I make, again, the WWE thing, that as much as I, say that, I was like, but at least they're not bringing Yoshiko back. And now they've crossed that line and brought Yoshiko back. And that's a good point. And I called it probably exaggerated a little bit, blood money, but I think it is a little bit of blood money that they're making money that they don't. I don't think it will sell many more tickets than they already would have sold if Yoshiko was there, if Yoshiko wasn't there.
I'll put it this way. If this company could, they'd be trying to make money off of Hana. Not Rossi, Bushiroad. They would try. You can't sit here and tell me they wouldn't. This is why I'm not shocked. Because we already have Rossi's sort of his sometimes questionable standards. But now you have a corporation over top of it that's really only seeing the dollar, the bottom line, and stuff. So I don't think Rossi would have crossed that line, but I don't think Rossi would have had a say crossing that line. Well, the Yoshiko one was his idea, but I think this company as a whole, we should be expecting different from at this point. We shouldn't. If we don't think they're going to cross a line, you should expect that they're probably going to cross that line if it's going to get them money. Maybe not because of Rossi, but because of Bushiroad.
I think that's a pretty big leap. Okay, pretty bold.
Mind if I ask a question here and jump in?
Specifically with that one, but I know where you're going with it.
I constantly hear, and Kay, you've brought this up a number of times now, the mention of this corporate entity surrounding Stardom and New Japan, Bushiroad. How come we don't have this corporate overlord mindset with Cyber Agent, with DDT and TJPW?
I think because one of them is less involved.
It's a bigger company.
One of them is less involved.
Because we like their booking.
that too, right? Like no, I think one's less involved. Cyber Agent's they're very, very hands off. If they were more hands on, the companies would be bigger. They'd be running bigger venues, things like that. They're very hands off. Cyber Agent itself views them as products to put on their TV channel, and kind of nothing more than that, from what I've gathered. And so, whereas Bushiroad's very hands on, especially with Stardom now, because they're trying to get them off the ground or whatever, they're very hands on. It's noticeable when you have Kadani tweeting stuff, like the head of the company tweeting things. You don't get that with Cyber Agent as much. Right? You may get a few promotion things here and there. They're doing something with the Cyber Agent's foods thing, or they're on the TV network that they run. But outside of that, they're incredibly hands off. They let the people that run those promotions just do what they want with the promotion.
Because Cyber Agent is making everything marketable, they're the bad guys?
No.
Like
you mean Bushiroad?
Right. Isn't Bushiroad just trying to make the company grow and get people marketable for a bigger push? That's why the company is growing so much? That's why New Japan grew so much?
It's not bad that they're trying to make the company grow. It's when a corporation does that, you should expect them to go for money, no matter what line that they would have to cross. I mean, there's obviously certain giant lines that probably wouldn't cross, but so
you're kind of talking out of both sides in that sense, because it's like Bushiroad is smaller than who owns DDT and TJPW. So
sure, but we're talking millions to billions. Though we're talking one that's
I understand, but so there's levels to it. But my point is, but you're saying like, well, these corporations, but then you should expect the worst in a sense, right? Which isn't a bad logic. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well then you would expect that the bigger corporation would do more shitty things, right? And
right, you would expect it, but they're not involved.
Well, okay, well
they're not involved, and I think that was what the different line is.
And we're not seeing either company grow that much.
Right.
Well, right, and that's because there's no involvement, there's no lifting it up.
I think
Maybe
that's
they should be more involved.
If tomorrow
If you want
Cyber Agent decides to do that, right? They decide to just start lifting up TJPW. If they do shady things, I'll call them out for that as well. They'll become more of a feel because they'll feel more corporate because they'll have more obvious corporate backings and pulling up. And I mean, there's very obviously that with Stardom right now. That's why it's easy to point it out. And
obvious, but not proven. Right? It's obvious, but it's not proven. It's we sit there and we say, this is too polished of a product. This has all the influences of a marketing company behind it, right? But
I mean,
we
have you
don't
seen
know
the
that
commercials?
Sure.
Have you seen the Japanese commercials they have for them? They're very, very highly produced.
I get that. And we saw the behind the scenes last year when they brought in all those fancy cameras and they had all those fancy videos that they were doing all behind the scenes for the video shows and additional content. But outside of that, do we really know for sure anything that we're saying? No.
No,
you know what I mean?
A lot of it's speculation. No, you've got
speculation.
It's very speculation.
I think we should keep that in context.
But how many other companies are taking talent from other companies? Stardom is the one that has obviously the cash flow behind them.
I don't think they took anybody so far. I don't think outside of Julia.
Which is last.
Natsumi's contract was up. Mina's contract was up. Himeko was already out the door.
Not that they're taking, but they can afford to bring on more talent. They can have probably a WWE size Raw. Like, that's an exaggeration, but they're
for everything. It's WWE.
No, but I mean, they are basically the WWE of Joshi in Japan.
Sure, I understand.
Their roster size,
TJPW,
has a bigger roster.
and Stardom has essentially the same size roster.
Yeah, I think TJPW actually has a slightly bigger roster by maybe 1 or 2.
But
I could be mistaken on that. But their roster isn't as big as it seems. The roster is about the same size as an Ice Ribbon.
But they can get anybody they want.
Sure, but I think
they can get anybody they want.
Is that not a good thing for the wrestlers to be paid and have a steady income rather than this free agent nonsense that's been happening for 20 years? No, but
they already have the money. That's my point about this is like it doesn't matter if Yoshiko is there or not. They're not going to go out of business. They're not going to make probably a penny more with Yoshiko being there versus Yoshiko not being there. They're going to sell out Budokan without her, with her. It doesn't matter.
Oh, Mr. Confident in them selling out Budokan. I've heard rumblings otherwise.
I like that take. I
absolutely do. I think they're going to they will sell it out. And it's a tactic they did not need to use, a decision they did not need to use to further their product along.
So would you say, Eric, from the Joshi Pod, that you don't look at Stardom as being dire?
Absolutely not.
Right. I would agree.
I would agree as well.
They're clearly not Diana.
In that context, I would give you a little bit more in your argument. You know what I mean? Like, I'm for everything that you said from a conventional workspace standpoint, right? And whether companies do or don't, it's irrelevant. Your argument was on the leadership side, poor leadership versus strong leadership. You don't bring that person back, right? And so, okay, right? It's interesting how it would be interesting to find out how on the nose we are, right? I think that's ultimately, and I think we get a little bit of that as the weeks go on here, right? As the story begins to unfold, as we get to see some of the promos and any type of hubbub that comes out on social media, not like news oriented, but just like how they interact, and is there any type of playing online and things like, how does this all kind of turn out, right? And it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting because you're right. It could crash and burn, right? Tomorrow. It could just go down. Or, maybe there's a redeeming quality at the end of this. But I think that ultimately you're right in the sense that Stardom in 2021 maybe would make just the same amount of money, whether they use this angle or not, as a prelude to the year. Okay, I can buy that argument.
Guys, why are we on this podcast today?
Talk your own.
It's a very good question. I think we spent about an hour talking about the whole Yoshiko thing.
No, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the dialogue. That's what I like to have with you guys. I like to do it on Twitter too, but it's very difficult to do it on Twitter because
what? Oh, come on! Nothing ever happens wrong on there in a limited character space with no edit button. Come on.
No, never.
So I really appreciate you guys humoring me and having that conversation with me when you guys were brought on to actually do a year-end podcast with me. So thank you, boys.
Welcome.
No problem, man. Me and my really hot takes over here.